Welcome to episode 6 of Workplace English Masterclass. Have you ever left a meeting feeling confused because you didn't fully understand what was discussed? Or perhaps you've avoided asking a question because you were worried about sounding inexperienced. If so, you're not alone. Many professionals hesitate to ask questions or clarify information because they fear appearing uninformed. However, in successful workplaces, asking thoughtful questions is actually a sign of professionalism, engagement, and responsibility. Professionals understand that misunderstandings can lead to mistakes, delays, and poor decision-making. That's why they ask questions, clarify information, and confirm understanding whenever necessary. In today's lesson, you'll learn practical workplace phrases that will help you ask questions confidently, seek clarification professionally, and communicate more effectively in meetings and workplace conversations. Let's get started. Before we learn the phrases, let's understand why this skill is so important. The first benefit is avoiding misunderstandings. Misunderstandings can lead to mistakes, missed deadlines, and unnecessary confusion. By asking questions and clarifying information, you reduce the risk of miscommunication. The second benefit is gathering accurate information. Good decisions depend on accurate information. Professional communicators make sure they fully understand the facts before taking action. The third benefit is improving decision-making. When you ask thoughtful questions, you often uncover details that others may have overlooked. This leads to better discussions and more informed decisions. The fourth benefit is building confidence. Many people think asking questions makes them look weak. In reality, asking intelligent questions often demonstrates curiosity, engagement, and professionalism. The final benefit is communicating clearly. When everyone has the same understanding, projects run more smoothly, and workplace communication becomes more effective. For these reasons, asking questions and clarifying information is one of the most valuable skills you can develop in any professional environment. Let's begin with some useful phrases for asking questions professionally. The first phrase is, "Could you explain that further?" This phrase is useful when you understand the general idea but would like more information. For example, "Could you explain that further? I'd like to understand how the new process will work." This sounds professional and demonstrates genuine interest. The second phrase is, "Could you provide an example?" Examples often make complex information easier to understand. For instance, "Could you provide an example of how this strategy would be applied?" This helps transform abstract ideas into practical situations. The third phrase is, "I'd like to understand better." This phrase communicates a willingness to learn rather than challenge the speaker. For example, "I'd like to understand better how these changes will affect our team." The final phrase is, "Could you elaborate on that?" To elaborate means to provide additional information or details. For example, "Could you elaborate on that recommendation?" This phrase is commonly used in meetings, presentations, and workplace discussions. These phrases help you gather information professionally while showing respect for the speaker. Let's now look at phrases for clarifying information. Clarification is important because assumptions can often lead to misunderstandings. Professional communicators make sure they understand information correctly before taking action. The first phrase is, "Just to clarify." This phrase is useful when you want to verify information without sounding confused. For example, "Just to clarify, the report is due next Friday, correct?" This helps prevent misunderstandings and ensures everyone is on the same page. The second phrase is, "If I understand correctly." This phrase allows you to check your understanding of what was said. For example, "If I understand correctly, we're focusing on the Malaysian market first." This gives the speaker an opportunity to confirm or correct your understanding. The third phrase is, "Let me confirm." This phrase is often used before repeating important information. For example, "Let me confirm, the client meeting has been moved to Wednesday." This helps ensure that important details are accurate. The final phrase is, "Are you saying that?" This phrase is useful when you want to verify a specific point. For example, Are you saying that we need to revise the entire proposal? These clarification phrases help reduce mistakes and improve workplace communication.
Sometimes the information we receive is not detailed enough. In these situations, we need to ask follow-up questions to gather additional information. Let's explore some useful phrases. The first phrase is, "Could you tell me more about that?" This is a polite and professional way to request additional information. For example, "Could you tell me more about the new training program?" This encourages the speaker to expand on their explanation. The second phrase is, "What specifically do you mean?" This phrase is useful when a statement is too broad or unclear. For example, "You mentioned communication issues. What specifically do you mean?" This helps uncover important details that may otherwise be overlooked.
The third phrase is, "Could you walk me through the process?" This phrase is especially useful when learning procedures or workflows. For example, "Could you walk me through the process for submitting expense claims?" The speaker can then explain each step clearly. The final phrase is, "Can you provide more details?" This phrase is versatile and can be used in many workplace situations. For example, "Can you provide more details about the proposed changes?" Remember, asking for more information is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you care about understanding the situation accurately. Another important communication skill is checking your understanding. Many workplace mistakes happen because people think they understand something when they actually don't. Professional communicators verify information before moving forward. The first phrase is, "Let me make sure I understand." This phrase signals that you're about to confirm important information. For example, "Let me make sure I understand. The presentation needs to be completed by Thursday." This allows the speaker to confirm or correct the information. The second phrase is, "So what you're saying is." This phrase is useful when summarizing someone else's message. For example, "So what you're saying is that we should prioritize customer feedback before launching the product." This demonstrates active listening and helps avoid misunderstandings. The third phrase is, "If I've understood correctly." This phrase encourages confirmation. For example, "If I've understood correctly, the budget has already been approved." The final phrase is, "Let me summarize what I've heard." This phrase is particularly useful during meetings. For example, "Let me summarize what I've heard. We will finalize the proposal this week and schedule a follow-up meeting next Monday." Checking understanding is one of the simplest ways to improve communication accuracy and reduce costly mistakes in the workplace. Let's look at our first workplace scenario. The manager says, "The project timeline has changed." This is an important update, but the statement is quite general. The employee responds, "Could you elaborate on that?" This is an excellent professional question. Rather than making assumptions, the employee asks for more information. Notice that the question sounds respectful and professional. The employee is not challenging the manager. Instead, they are seeking clarity. The manager then explains, "The deadline has been moved to next month." Now the employee has the information needed to understand the situation properly. Imagine if the employee had not asked the question. They might have misunderstood the timeline or made incorrect assumptions about the project. This example shows why clarification is so important in the workplace. Asking questions helps ensure that everyone has accurate information before making decisions or taking action. Let's examine another workplace scenario. A client says, "We'd like some adjustments." This statement is quite broad. The word adjustments could refer to many different things. The employee responds, "Just to clarify, are you referring to the design specifications?" This is an excellent example of clarification. Rather than guessing what the client means, the employee checks their understanding. Notice that the employee uses a specific question. This helps narrow down the discussion and identify exactly what the client wants. The phrase, "just to clarify," is particularly useful because it sounds professional and respectful. Clients, colleagues, and managers generally appreciate clarification because it reduces the likelihood of mistakes. This scenario demonstrates that asking questions is often more efficient than making assumptions. A few seconds spent clarifying information can prevent hours of confusion later. Now let's discuss some common mistakes people make when communicating in the workplace. The first mistake is assuming information. Sometimes people believe they understand a message when they actually don't. As a result, they may make decisions based on incomplete or incorrect information. This can lead to misunderstandings and costly mistakes. The second mistake is being afraid to ask questions. Many people worry that asking questions will make them appear inexperienced. In reality, asking thoughtful questions often demonstrates professionalism and engagement. The third mistake is interrupting speakers. Interrupting can cause you to miss important information and may make the other person feel that they are not being listened to. Now, let's look at the positive alternatives. Clarifying information helps ensure that everyone shares the same understanding. Confirming understanding reduces confusion and improves communication accuracy. Asking respectfully encourages open discussion and helps build positive workplace relationships. Remember, successful communicators are not afraid to ask questions. They understand that clarity is often more important than appearing knowledgeable. Let's now look at some professional communication tips that can help you ask better questions and clarify information more effectively. The first tip is listen carefully. Many people focus so much on preparing their response that they stop listening to what the other person is actually saying. Professional communicators listen attentively before asking questions. The second tip is ask specific questions. General questions often produce general answers. Specific questions help you obtain more useful information. For example, instead of asking, "Can you explain that?" you might ask, "Can you explain how this change will affect our team?" The third tip is confirm key details. Important information such as deadlines, budgets, responsibilities, and meeting dates should always be confirmed. This helps reduce misunderstandings and ensures accuracy. The fourth tip is avoid assumptions. Assumptions are one of the most common causes of workplace mistakes. If something is unclear, ask for clarification rather than guessing. The final tip is take notes when necessary. Taking notes can help you remember important information and reduce the likelihood of forgetting key details. These simple habits can significantly improve your communication skills and help you work more effectively with colleagues, managers, and clients. Could you explain? Think about a workplace situation where you need additional information. For example, could you explain how the new reporting system works? The second sentence is, just to clarify. Remember that this phrase helps you confirm information. For example, just to clarify, the meeting starts at 10 a.m., correct? The third sentence is, let me confirm. This phrase is useful when repeating important details. For example, let me confirm. The project deadline is next Friday. The final sentence is, if I understand correctly. This phrase helps you verify your understanding. For example, if I understand correctly, we're focusing on customer retention this quarter. Try completing each sentence using examples from your own workplace, studies, or daily life. The more you practice these phrases, the more natural and confident you'll become when using them in real conversations. Congratulations on completing episode 6 of Workplace English Masterclass. Today, you've learned how to ask questions professionally, clarify information, seek additional details, and confirm understanding in workplace conversations. Let's briefly review what we've covered. You learned phrases for asking questions professionally. You learned techniques for clarifying information. You learned how to request additional details when information is unclear. You learned how to check your understanding and confirm important information. And you explored practical communication habits that help professionals avoid misunderstandings and communicate more effectively. Remember, asking questions is not a sign of weakness. In fact, some of the most successful professionals are excellent question askers. They understand that asking the right questions leads to better understanding, better decisions, and better results. As you continue developing your workplace communication skills, try using some of today's phrases during meetings, discussions, and workplace conversations. With practice, these expressions will become natural and help you communicate with greater confidence and professionalism. In Episode 7, we'll learn how to give feedback professionally and constructively in workplace situations. Thank you for learning with everyday English treats. I'll see you in the next lesson.